Morning. We're live in the chamber. Before we begin, I'll go over the emergency response plan for this room. In an emergency, everyone must evacuate through the nearest safe exit. Those seated in the gallery take direction from security. Council takes direction from myself to evacuate. After evacuating the room, please proceed to a stairwell. Take the stairs to ground level and evacuate the building through the doors marked emergency exit and go to the muster point. Do not take an elevator or walk through the city room. Anyone with limited mobility should identify themselves to security or myself during an evacuation. And finally, please speak with security or myself if you require first aid. Thank you.
Thank you. And good morning, everyone, and welcome to the May 12th Community and Public Services Committee meeting. I'd like to call this meeting to order and begin by acknowledging that we meet on the traditional land of Treaty 6 territory and the Métis homeland, and acknowledge the diverse Indigenous peoples whose ancestors' footsteps have marked this territory for centuries, such as Cree, Dene, Saulteaux, Blackfoot, Nakota Iska, as well as the Métis and Inuit, and now settlers from around the world. We'll now move to a roll call of committee members. Councillor Rutherford.
Good morning.
Good morning. Councillor Hamilton.
Good morning.
Good morning. And Councillor Stevenson.
Good morning.
Good morning. We're also joined by Councillor Tang in Chambers.
Good morning.
Good morning. We have Councillor Rice online.
Good morning.
Good morning. Councillor Wright.
Good morning.
Morning. Councillor Principe.
Good morning.
And that is it. We might have some folks joining later. Okay, so adoption of the agenda. Councillor Stevenson?
Yes, I'll move adoption of the May 12th agenda. Sorry, I'm not seeing any changes. So just as is. Great.
Great. Thank you. Please vote on adoption of the agenda.
We have all the votes.
Please display the vote. That's carried. Approval of the minutes.
I'll move the approval of the March 31st, 2025 Community and Public Services Committee, as well as the April 14th Community and Public Services Committee, non-regular.
Thank you. Any errors or omissions? Seeing none, please vote.
We have all the votes.
Please display the vote. That's carried. Thank you. Protocol items, none that I'm aware of this morning. Moving on to items for discussion, selection of items for debate.
I will select 7.1 and 7.2, please.
Okay, thank you. So 7172, perfect. Vote on reports not selected for debate, none. Request to speak. I do know we have a number of speakers. Councillor Stevenson, would you like to read those in?
Yes, thank you. I'll move that Community and Public Services Committee hear from the following speakers and panels when appropriate. On item 7.1, Heather Cameron from the Alberta Avenue Street Team, Vani Reiko Flores from the Alberta Avenue Street Team, and also Dana and Tanya Moore from the Accessibility Advisory Committee.
Excellent, thank you. Please vote to hear from speakers.
We have all the votes.
Display the vote. That's carried. Thank you. Requests for a specific time on the agenda, none. Councillor inquiries, none. Reports to be dealt with in another meeting, none. Okay, we are on to our first item, which is 7.1, Accessibility for People with Disabilities Policy, C602, and request to speak. So we'll invite administration to come down and provide us with a presentation before we hear from our speakers. Thank you.
Good morning, committee. I'm Pascal Adoussard. I'm the branch manager for infrastructure planning and design. The presentation will be done today by Roger Lockwood, who is the Director of the Department Strategy for Integrated Infrastructure Services. He is also the co-chair of the Corporate Accessibility Committee. The other co-chair is Michael Gunter, our acting city solicitor, and so we'll be here for questions after speakers.
Good morning. Good morning, members of council. It's my pleasure to provide a presentation relating to the updated policy of accessibility for people with disabilities. Next slide, please. To provide some context, according to 2022 statistics, 1 in 4 Edmontonians identify as having at least one disability. This number was 1 in 5 in the 2017 survey, which indicates that this number is increasing. Statistics Canada has identified 10 types of disabilities. In addition to mobility, which is what we typically think about when we hear the word disability, it could be pain, mental health related, hearing, seeing, learning, memory, or developmental disabilities. A disability can be visible, invisible, temporary, or episodic, and could affect anyone at any stage in their life, regardless of any other identity factor that makes us who we are. In our work at the city, we are aligned with the Accessible Canada Act in our definition of disability, which suggests that disability is a functional limitation which interaction with a barrier hinders a person's full and equal participation in society. The barriers limit independence and choice and could be physical, systemic, attitudinal, communication, or technological. Accessibility is about removing barriers to create communities, workplaces, and services that enable everyone to participate in our city. Next slide, please. A brief history on policies relating to accessibility. In the early 1990s, Edmonton had 2 policies related to accessibility. These policies were specific to access to buildings and employment, and in 2016, a 3rd policy on accessibility of council hearings was approved. In 2019, the 3 policies were repealed, and the current Accessibility for People with Disabilities policy, C602, was approved. To support the implementation of that policy, the city's first corporate accessibility plan was published in 2021. This plan had 70 actions to make services more accessible and included work from all departments. The updated policy is a continuation of the journey to make Edmonton a more accessible city. Administration has drafted the next 4-year corporate accessibility plan for 2025 to 2029, which will be finalized here in Q3. Next slide. The current policy, C602, is a commitment to ensuring equitable access and participation. The policy reflects the city's vision to create livability for all, where everyone has what they need to succeed, and where we create a community that connects people to what matters to them. There were multiple factors that led to this policy, and those include acknowledging barriers to accessibility and the number of people it impacts. As I mentioned earlier, statistics show that more than 20% of people identify as having a disability. Barriers prevent people from accessing city services, programs, and spaces. As a municipality, we want to make city services more inclusive and equitable. Another factor is the current legislation, that is the Alberta Human Rights Act, is a complaint-driven system and relies on individual accommodations. Alberta is one of the last 2 provinces who do not have a Provincial Accessibility Act, which is more of a proactive approach towards accessibility. Municipal and national accessibility standards were evolving when this policy was originally put in place, including the Accessible Canada Act. As a large municipality with a population of over 1 million people, we wanted to align with national and municipal accessibility best practices to promote a culture of inclusion, dignity, and respect for people with disabilities. The intent was to be deliberate about creating a welcoming city for all. Next slide. With the updates, the intent of policy C602 remains the same. The update aligns with the current corporate policy framework and our commitment to make Edmonton an accessible city. An accessible city is where residents and visitors are able to fully participate and feel welcome regardless of their abilities. Key updates include simpler language, clearer commitments, new guiding principles, and minor updates to definitions to align the current best practices. We engage with the Accessibility Advisory Committee on an ongoing basis for guidance and feedback. In addition to that, 2 phases of public engagement were completed as part of the policy update. Engagement conducted in 2024 indicated that a large percentage of people with disabilities experience barriers or are challenged when accessing city services such as city programs, infrastructure, public transit, and communication. Feedback on the barriers were used to develop actions for the next corporate accessibility plan. Out of 1,700 respondents, 43% agreed that accessibility of city programs, services, and spaces has improved over the past few years. Engagement was also conducted earlier this year in 2025 to get feedback on the policy updates. There was broad support for the updated policy. In terms of implementation, implementation of the updated policy will continue to be an incremental phased-in approach using existing resources and budget. An updated procedure will guide administration in activating this policy. A key element of the policy implementation continues to be the development and implementation of the corporate accessibility action plans. The plan includes actions to address barriers that people with disabilities face when accessing city programs, spaces, or services. As mentioned earlier, extensive engagement was conducted to develop the next 2025 to 2029 corporate accessibility plan, which will be published later this year. Annual progress reports will be published relating to that action plan. Accessibility is not just about enabling access. It's about ensuring that Edmontonians with disabilities have the same opportunities and quality of life as everyone else. It's about creating vibrant and inclusive communities where everyone can belong, contribute, and thrive. It enhances independence and well-being through increased participation and engagement in what Edmonton has to offer. In addition to removing barriers for people with disabilities, accessibility benefits the larger community as well. That's the end of our presentation, and we'll return to address questions once you've heard the speakers.
Excellent. Thank you so much for the presentation. We're now going to hear from our speakers who are joining us online. So our first speaker is Heather Cameron from the Alberta Avenue Street Team. Hi, Heather.
Hi, how are you? Thank you for having me today.
Thanks for being here. You'll have 5 minutes, and we're going to turn the floor over to you right now. Go ahead.
Thank you. So good morning to you all. My name is Heather Cameron, and I work for Alberta Avenue Street Team, which is a partnership between the Alberta Avenue Business Association and the Alberta Avenue Community League. The Street Team has started as a project from a neighborhood revitalization grant, and I have been working with the Alberta Avenue Street Team for almost 5 years. As part of my work, I walk the avenue from Nate on 107th Street to Northlands Coliseum on 78th Street on a daily basis. My job on Alberta Avenue is to ensure it's safe and welcoming for businesses and the people that live and work on Alberta Avenue. And with that being said, I do get to see people and talk with them on a daily basis. And I see people from all walks of life. But what I regularly notice are those who struggle with accessibility on the sidewalks and the curbs on Alberta Avenue. So according to the administration report, LLS 02803 document, Community Insight, page 4, it says that 76% of 546 respondents experience barriers when using public streets or open spaces. For us, these numbers are neighbors, colleagues, friends, and family. Accessibility is important on Alberta Avenue and all over the city, but there are areas our team gets to identify proactively. We need sidewalks that are level so people with disabilities that use walkers and wheelchairs, etc. So we avoid people tripping or falling over the cracks or dips on the sidewalks. We need accessibility to be safe for everyone. For everyone to access the businesses in the city without worrying if they can get into a building or about if they can get over that sidewalk or curb or the steps. On Alberta Avenue, I know some spaces where people experience accessibility challenges, and we are eager to remove those barriers. So I'd like to the City Council to consider working with BIAs in the city. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. Really appreciate you being here. Before we go to our next speaker, I just want to take a moment to acknowledge some special guests that we have with us today. We have a class of grade 9 students with their teacher, Miss Emmons, from the, oh gosh, I'm struggling to read writing, the college, is it Heights? Is that what I'm saying? Okay, College Heights Christian School from Ward Nakota Iska. Great, are you with us the entire day? Or are you just visiting for the morning? Yeah, someone's gonna have to let us know. Just the morning? Okay, and are you doing like a full tour? Are you doing mock council? You are, okay. Okay, I'm going to. And actually, you know what I might do? I'm not as exciting as the mayor, so I think I'm going to, I'm going to invite Mayor Sohi to welcome a special guest down to the podium for a few words.
Well, hello everyone. You got to show a little bit more excitement than that. You're at City Hall. Come on, how are you doing? Well, that's better. Yeah. So we are in a committee, and Councilor Salvador is chairing the committee. I am part of the committee, that's why I'm not chairing it. But when I chair, I usually ask when classes come in to City Hall chambers to see if they're doing a mock council. I understand you are doing a mock council. So have you selected your mayor yet? You have. Who is your mayor? Okay, your worship. You want to come down to the podium? Come on, you can do it. Don't be shy, come on. Yeah, just step up there to the podium. The light will be on. So first tell us your name.
My name is Dael Lewis.
Lois, and what are you going to be talking about at your mock council?
I haven't gone over that yet.
Or do you haven't selected a topic of discussion yet? You have. And you haven't told that to the mayor yet. Oh. Okay, what is it? Huh?
Mayor's last to know.
I know, sometimes mayor are actually last to know. Yeah. Oh, so the whether public transit should be free for kids K to 12. Okay. And so let us know when you have decided what your decision is, because we had that conversation here a number of times, different views on it, right? So would love to learn what your views are from your council. Thank you so much for joining us. Lovely to see you all. All right, back to Councilor Salvador.
Awesome, thank you so much. We're now going to move to our next speaker. We have Vianney Ricio Flores from the Alberta Avenue Street team. Good morning.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Hi.
Please go ahead. You have 5 minutes.
Okay. Hi, everyone. As I say, my name is Vianney, and I am with Alberta Avenue Business Association. And I have been managed the public washroom in Alberta for almost a year now. And today I want to share how the City of Edmonton's update accessibility policy C6028 connect with our day-to-day work. Sorry. At Alberta Avenue, we see every day how essential accessibility really is. A public washroom might seem like a small thing, but it plays a big role in helping people feel safe, respected, and included. We welcome people with all wide of range needs. Some are using wheelchairs and or walkers, and others lives with less invisible disabilities, just to mention like chronic pain, anxiety, mental health conditions, learning challenges. And that's why I was especially glad to see that the update policy now recognize invisible disabilities. It's a meaningful update that reflects that we are seeing on the ground. And one of the most important changes in the policy is its focus on removing barriers before they happen. And it's about, for me, like planning ahead, creating spaces that are easy and comfortable to use from the start, not just reacting after an issue comes up. And we have been trying to apply this thinking to Alberta Avenue facility. Just to mention some, like making sure that the doors are open smoothly, checking that the signs are clear and easy to understand. And another one, it was like making the space feel safe and welcoming for everyone. The city also promoting in universal designing spaces that work for as many people as possible, regardless of their needs. That might be means better lighting, enough space to move around, or more accessible path to the entries. Another part that part of the policy that I really like is focusing on working together. It's not just about rules, it's about sharing ideas, getting support, and making sure that organization like ours have the tools and support we need to make real improvements. And this policy is helpful for me personally, definitely yes. It gives us a clear path, make sure that we are working together to the same way like the city wants to, and help everyone get better at serving our community. So in the end, our ask today is simple. We want the guiding principle also emphasize that administration should collaborate with business improvement areas, just as they are directly to work with partners in the development industry. And we believe that this will help Edmontonians to, no matter their abilities, to feel welcome, respected, and comfortable using public spaces. Thank you for your time.
Great, thank you so much. We're going to move to our final speaker, Dana Antaya Moore from the Accessibility Advisory Committee. Hi, Dana.
Hi, thank you for the opportunity to speak with everyone today. As you've heard, my name is Dana Antaya Moore, and I am the new chair of the Accessibility Advisory Committee. I want to start by celebrating the significant contributions of our former chair, Tanya LaRiviere, and that she has made and will continue to make to improve accessibility in Edmonton, and acknowledging that I have huge shoes to fill. She's a hard act to follow. In September of 2029, the AAC spoke to Council about its support for policy C602. During that presentation, they said, it is of the utmost importance that policy C602 not be viewed as the last step of a process. While a tremendous amount of work has gone into it, the work has only just begun. We are excited at the prospect of policy C602 being a living document that evolves as Edmonton and its citizens grow and change. Now, here we are in 2025, And the reality of policy C602 as a living document is evidenced by the fact that the AAC is back once again to speak about our support for this work and for the impacts that this policy can have and is having on the day-to-day lives of all Edmontonians. I say all Edmontonians because, as Roger indicated in his presentation, those of us who view ourselves as able-bodied are really only temporarily not disabled. If a person lives long enough, then age and life will eventually take their toll on mind and body. Having a policy like C602 isn't for disabled Edmontonians. It is, in fact, for all Edmontonians, ensuring that everyone of every age and ability is afforded the same access to the services that come when thoughtful practices, considerations, and accountability are implemented. The AAC has appreciated the opportunity for ongoing consultations with City administration as they have updated this policy. Included in this ongoing consultation has been the sharing of a dashboard of sorts that explicitly communicates the progress made towards achieving the actions embedded in the policy and the metrics that have been used to offer evidence of progress. Administration's intentionality in sharing their work with us and listening to and from our input is a model for collaboration and communication, and why it matters and why it makes a difference. We've seen our input around the need for equity. We've seen our input accepted around the need for equity, more accessible parking stalls, the duty to accommodate individuals with disabilities in the city workplace and programs, barrier-free access during construction, and the recognition of both visible and invisible disabilities incorporated in the new actions set out in the 2025 to 2029 policy. And we are grateful and excited about what this means for Edmontonians. We know policy C602 reflects not only our collective AAC voice, but the feedback of countless Edmontonians who have lent their voice to the engagement process. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Great, thank you so much for being with us today. I'll now turn to committee members if there are any questions. This was selected by Councillor Stevenson. Do you have questions?
Really excellent commentary, and I certainly will take a few questions forward to administration, but none of the speakers at this time, just to say thank you again for the work that you're doing in our communities.
Excellent. Councillor Tang, were you on the board? Here's Sophie.
All right. First of all, thank you so much to three of you for making the presentation and also being the voice for the community. May all start with Dana. Dana Moore. Congratulations on your new role. I want to focus more on the advocacy part. How do you see the role of this committee and council in advancing some of the work internally? Absolutely, this policy speaks to that, and there are changes here. But beyond city administration into changes into, for example, the provincial legislation or clawing back of the benefits that we have recently heard from community members. We got some emails from them on that.
Thank you for the question. As I think about it, I think it's really about how can we continue to collaborate and not just with the AAC as an advisory group, but also with stakeholders like Alberta Avenue who have come to speak today. I think it's about how do we collaborate together to have a collective voice that's representative of everyone, and look for various ways and means to lift our voices and to bring them forward at the provincial level around the Accessibility Act. How do we collaborate with folks like the Premier's Council for people with disabilities? And again, how do we work together so that we are offering a powerful and collective voice going forward?
Mm-hmm. So how do you see this committee assisting in that work? Is there any specific things that we can do to advance that collaborative approach and work with Premier's accessibility group and the government?
Well, I think around how do we communicate with them? So writing letters, perhaps setting up meetings, inviting individuals from within the community to join those meetings and speak from their lived experience. When you start to put faces to the names or faces to the various groups and folks who are affected by decisions that are being made or not made, I think it adds credibility and value to the conversations. But I think it's about ongoing and relentless conversations, in particular with the province.
Got it. Okay. Okay. And to Heather Cameron, thank you for your work and also your advocacy on behalf of the community members you work with. There's the intersection, I'm pretty sure you're noticing more than anyone else because you're out in the community, intersection of disability and houselessness. Many people who experience houselessness also experience both physical disability but also other disabilities that may not be as visible. Can you speak to that?
Hi, Sohi. Yeah, we're very committed to having great staff that work for the street team. And yeah, we're out here every day trying to make it a good place for everybody to feel welcome, right? So we're welcoming, if you guys, a committee, come out to Alberta Avenue and we could give you guys a walkthrough maybe someday.
Okay.
If you guys are interested, we'll be able to do that as well.
Okay, definitely we'll take it up on that because that'll be an opportunity for to see reinforce some of the stuff that we have been some of the challenges that we have been hearing from people with lived experience of houselessness and the disability. Thank you so much. Really appreciate your everyone's hard work.
Great, thank you. Councillor Tang?
Yeah, great. Thank you. Maybe I'll start with the street team first. Thank you for coming. I think it's always really important to hear about how policies are manifested at in the day-to-day work. You both talked a lot about wanting the city to work closer with the BIAs. Is there any particular form that you see that taking place? What does that look like to you? I don't know. Maybe I'll start with Vianney and then Heather.
Hi. Do you hear me?
Yes, yes. Please go ahead.
So what was your question? Sorry, I couldn't.
Okay, how do you, what does working with BIA look like to you?
Well, it's working for our community. We work for our community, so we would like to be added to the guidelines.
Okay, thank you. Heather, do you have anything to add?
Hi. I think working with the BIAs would be very important because to me, it's, I think that they're focusing more on the newer developments when we are an older community that we have a lot of issues with the drainages, the sidewalks and dips in the roads and stuff. That would be nice if they came out here to take a look at that and see what these older communities are dealing with on a daily basis for people with accessibilities, even just to cross the crosswalk. There's a lot of holes and cracks that they might trip on, right?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you for that addition. I'll be happy to clarify that with administration too, because I do know neighborhood renewal reconstruction is a really important mechanism for incorporating this policy. Dana, maybe just to build on the mayor's question to you, we know that city policies alone cannot solve all the accessibility issues in the world, and we hear that constantly. I'm wondering what do you, and in particular, recently, provincially, there has been a lot of cutback to people with disability programs. There's remain, as the presentation pointed out, a lack of provincial legislation to do that proactive work. I'm wondering if you can just share some reflections from the committee about these policy intersections and the gaps. Yeah.
That's another great question, and I need to think just a little bit about that. I mean, we have certainly, as a committee, had conversations about our concerns around this and how we might address them. Many of us, including our family, has been affected by things like cuts to PDD and other areas, and a number of us were at the rally that happened last Wednesday around AISH and Canadian Disability Benefit and the challenges that's posing. I also, one of the things our committee is doing is looking at how we might collaborate with other equity deserving groups like VAD, Barrier Free Alberta, to be able to, again, look for opportunities to speak collectively around that. And it's something I think that will be increasingly significant in our discussions as a committee moving forward.
Yeah, and I absolutely agree with you on that. And then finally, I'm wondering if you can just touch on a little bit about you and the committee's experience engaging with the city on this policy.
I have to say, I was not on the committee at the start of C602, but I've had 4 years of hearing from Heather and Yogi and Roger. They come to our committee regularly. They come with an attitude of curiosity and a desire to learn with and from us about how to make the policy better, and what are the kinds of things that need to happen. And so, as I said, it's been a model of collaboration and communication that we have really valued as a committee.
That's great to hear, and I hope it does become a model for many other engagements. Thank you so much all for being here.
Thank you, Councillor Tang. So I'm not seeing further questions for speakers at this time, so we'll now transition to questions of administration. I'll go to Councillor Stevenson to start.
Yeah, thank you very much. First, just want to give kudos to the work that's happened, and sort of hearing the positive feedback in that conversation is really great to hear. So congratulations to the team on that. For me, I think the strengths are very, very clear. Just want to dig in a little bit more to the annual reports and that reporting structure in terms of how we're ensuring that we are meeting these objectives. And apologies if I missed this in here, but will the annual reports ever be brought to council for review?
Thank you, Councillor Stevenson. So it comes to forward, any reporting comes forward to council as a memo, but maybe I can speak a bit to the process of the development of our plan. As we mentioned, we engage with the public as well as with staff to get an understanding of challenges and opportunities and pieces of work that need to be included in those plans. Each department has a department action committee with representatives that develop their plan. And then those are consolidated into a corporate accessibility plan, like I mentioned. And in the previous one, the 3-year from 2021 to 2024, we had 70 actions. I believe it was 42 or 46 were completed. A number of them were closed, and some pieces are just continuing to be ongoing because they're quite significant. And we see similar results in the upcoming action plan. So the group is very ambitious in terms of wanting to do the work and putting those actions in place. So it's really quite thorough.
Yeah. Oh, did you want to add something?
So I just wanted to let you know, Councillor, so we do report in a memo, and so after that, should Council wish for those types of reporting to come to committee, something we can do, we would just need direction for that.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I appreciate receiving memos. We do often have quite a high volume of things to read, and I just think for me the value of having this type of report is that then we can provide motions right off the bat for unfunded service packages, things like that. So maybe that's something we can chat about it as a committee, but it's certainly something that I would welcome coming back to committee on an annual basis. It just helps us have a bit more focus on it, and then allows us to also hear from the community, which I think is an important input. Just in terms of some of the barriers from the survey results, so that's obviously a higher number than we want to see in terms of people facing barriers while using city infrastructure. Do we have a sense from there if that is the physical structure and or the operations in terms of snow clearing? Is there any sort of breaking out of that information about?
Yogi, can you speak to that?
So physical barriers is the biggest barrier that we see, and snow and ice is an ongoing issue. So that is one of the biggest barriers. And then when there is, during winter, the navigating spaces becomes an issue as well. We did also ask about other barriers as well, such as communication, transit, etc. But what came to the top was physical barriers and also city programs as well.
Okay, well, thank you for that. And sort of on that note, I think our current policies are quite strong in terms of the new infrastructure that's being built. For an area like 118 Ave, hearing some of the challenges that they're facing, can you remind me when 118th is slated for renewal? Or I don't know if you have that off.
I don't have that information in hand.
Okay.
I'll see if I can get it before the discussion is over.
Okay, and perhaps to just a sense as well, I believe this was in the downtown plan that we're discussing tomorrow. I could be wrong, but sort of a new approach to dealing with infrastructure in the interim. So I know in Wauquentuin, for example, that's a neighborhood that's slated for renewal, but there has been a bit more effort to addressing some of the challenges in the interim, so grinding down some of the sidewalks where tripping hazards were existing. Just wondering if that is sort of a formal program or approach the administration is taking.
Yeah, we have Caitlin here that can speak to that. I think she's online.
Good morning. Yeah, I am. Good morning,
Oh, hi,
Councillor
Caitlin.
Stevenson. So through our maintenance practices, we do address trip hazards as well as any deficiencies in sidewalks. Those are done through two different ways. So the first one is there's quarterly inspections that are done through our life cycle management group, which identify any displacement in sidewalks over a certain threshold. Those are then prioritized by our crews to go out and either address through grinding, slab leveling, or replacement of sidewalk or bricks. And on top of that as well, we manage those 2 3-1-1 inspections as well as when our crews are out on site.
Okay, great. Great to know that those programs exist. Thank you.
Great, thank you. I'll just take a quick round as well, and just want to thank administration for the excellent work on this, and maybe to build on the previous questions that were just asked. When it comes to some of the work that is done in the interim as communities wait for neighborhood renewal, I think you were getting there, Caitlin, but speaking about 311 as being one of the options for people to report those kinds of issues, I'm also just thinking about how much on the ground expertise and information that the street team folks have, because they're walking communities every single day and interacting with folks who might experience those barriers. Is there also an opportunity for just some collaboration there so that they can share some of those problematic areas that need that attention?
So Councillor Salvador, absolutely. So James Robinson is within my team in the branch manager's office. He works very closely with the BIAs and Alberta Avenue being one of those. So absolutely, they have regular meetings. So any of those, I would call that intimate knowledge of the things that are in the area or what they're hearing can absolutely come back to us for either assistance or connection within the broader city or even with our teams to prioritize any type of work that needs to happen.
Excellent. That's really good to hear, and a great way to be able to just action the experience and knowledge that they have on the ground. Okay, I wanted to ask about, so the 2021 to 2024 Corporate Accessibility Plan, I think it was just mentioned that around 46 actions were completed, 19 are ongoing. I just wanted to get a sense, is there, recognizing some of those might be much more challenging to implement or longer term in scope, can you reflect on any trends that you're seeing there? Are there obvious ones that are going to take a long time? What are some of the barriers that you might be running into in that implementation?
I'll ask Yogi to share the thoughts of the team.
Some of the things that we focused on in the first accessibility plan is one thing is creating awareness about accessibility within the corporation, and also we did social media posts as well. So it was a focus to build awareness so that we are moving in the same direction as an organization, and also education as well, because within the different city services and the roles we have, we did a lot of educational courses and training on how accessibility fits into those and how accessibility can be incorporated. So that was one of the things we focused on. From the next plan, we will be focusing specifically on other services and how to integrate accessibility into them. In terms of challenges, we are working on this within existing resources and budgets. So we did consider that as it is one of the key considerations.
Right. Okay. And I appreciate you sharing that. And maybe on that note, I would also be interested and supportive of having just a more dedicated space to be able to have an annual check-in in the form of a report coming back to committee. Would you need direction on that today?
No, I don't think we do. I think that's a reasonable ask, and we will make sure that we incorporate that in as an annual update rather than a memo. We can bring it as a report.
Perfect. Great. Thank you so much. Oh yeah, and so I noticed the explicit language around collaboration with development industry, and just to follow up on the questions that were asked from the street teams and the BIA, is there, how to incorporate collaborations with our business community and BIAs into this work? What do you think the best approach would be there?
Yeah, I think the language of the policy was definitely not meant to exclude collaboration with any group. We're calling out development industry very particularly because of their influence that they have on building the new neighborhoods, and so how important that their decisions that they make when they build the new neighborhoods have on the city providing better accessible spaces for all. I think in general, we're definitely open to maybe looking at the wording and ensuring that the collaboration with all community partners, including BIAs, could be added. Just to flag, it would need a motion from committee so that we could update that before the policy is brought to council.
Okay, I'm probably gonna run out of time here, but yeah, I'll come back, or others might ask it, but thank you so much for those answers. And I'll go to Councillor Rutherford.
Thank you. I'm just going to rapid fire off a series of questions focused more on the content of the policy in and of itself. I guess to start, in the opening statement, I'm wondering if administration talked about or discussed any ability to add wording around that improving accessibility actually improves universal access. Because what I'm worried about and what I've seen, so I'll put a little bit of context, is often a lot of the things that require support for accessibility barrier removal are costly. And we've been dealing with a lot of budget stuff. And so I find it's much more palatable if we're explaining to Edmontonians that this is actually improving the experience for everyone, as opposed to just for a particular group. Thoughts on that?
It's a very good comment, Councillor Rutherford. I think in our work around accessibility, I think it's a concept that's very well understood about the fact that what we want to implement is universal design. And so if spaces, programs, employment is accessible to people with disabilities, it's accessible for all. And so that's something that I think we're definitely in agreement with, and it is part of our work. I think it's a good point that you make around it is not called out specifically in the policy. We kind of focus on how we're going to do that rather than maybe that kind of aim at or that concept of accessibility brings benefit to all. Right?
Yeah, I would just, as a committee member, I don't know how to modify, but I would like some language in there around that, because I do think, like you said, there's the intentionality, but I do think the those initial opening statements and the purpose of the policy is actually more guiding than people give credit for, I think, a lot of times as policymakers. And that actually leads to my second question, because my second question was, why do you say in the definitions, why do you have the definition of accessible design instead of universal design? And I was going to ask you about sort of the language around those two and why you chose the one you did.
Just for clarification, both are definitions. So we do have accessible design and universal design. I'll let Yogi speak to the application of the different wording.
Yeah, that would be great.
So universal design does include accessible design as well, but universal design also includes child-friendly design, for example, other inclusive design for diversity as well. The reason why we want have both is because we want to ensure that the factor of accessible design is not lost when we actually capture the whole spectrum of universal design.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Appreciate that. And that's exactly it. I was confused as to both, so that's a really good explanation. Going to attachment 3, and I'm just trying to pull it up right now, and it's not wanting to come up on my eScribe. My eScribe is really funny because I'm in this weird mode, as I've said to the city clerk. Okay, it's not letting me pull up attachment 3 right now, so I can't look at it to reference. So I'm going by memory right now. Why the language shift to the word aim instead of committed?
Yogi?
So the intention is that we are committed to being accessible city. There are lots of things that we are learning as we are working with the community on what it actually takes to make it an accessible city. That's one of the reasons why we said we are aiming. So we are striving for it. But the intention behind it is that we are committed.
But is there legal, from a policy perspective, is there a legal difference? And I think there is.
I would agree with you. I think there is a legal difference, but I think that ultimately, as you reflected previously, there is a budgetary implication to having perfect accessibility, and we always want to strive towards that. We aim towards that, but to compel us as an organization to put that as not allow us to, I guess, hand that off against the budget implications of any sort of decision. I think aims is just a softer word and recognizes that there will be times when, from a cost perspective or from a practicality perspective, all we can do is our best and we can't reach perfection.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Sohi.
Well, thank you. Building an equitable city that has access to services, infrastructure, amenities, and opportunities for people who live with disabilities is absolutely an important part of city building. So how do you see this new changes advancing some of their work and also dealing with some of the dissatisfaction that we have noticed in the surveys?
So I think the new policy very much builds on the efforts that were done through the establishment of the original policy and the work that we've done with the advocacy groups and the advisory group of council, apologies. And so it is very much a statement of where we want to be and what kind of city we want to be, and integrating all of those considerations into every work that we do. And Yogi mentioned that we're working a lot on education and awareness within the city, and so that work continues. Awareness of where the barriers are is really important for us to inform the corporate accessibility plan, and so that's the actions, that's where we're going to make a difference.
So one of the areas that Yogi identified and we heard from the community is, physical access during winter. Snow and ice, we increased the budget almost by 20%. how is that being used? Because during winter, that's the biggest complaint we hear from people living with disabilities, accessibility, that they can't get to transit stops, they can't get into out of their neighborhoods because sidewalks are not cleared, both private sidewalks as well as publicly owned sidewalks are not cleared on time. Like, we have standards for roads, how quickly they get cleared. We have standards for bike lanes, how quickly they get cleared. Do we have standards for sidewalks, particularly public sidewalks?
Maybe I'll invite Caitlin to jump in. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Sohi. So we do. What makes it a little bit more complicated for sidewalks is if where that sidewalk is located. So if it's located in front of a private business or in front of a residential home, for an example, the roles and responsibilities who clears that, is really contingent on where that sidewalk's located.
But how's the enforcement on this?
Pardon?
How is the enforcement on that, on the private side?
Yeah, so there is enforcement officers who go out. They'll do spot checks. I don't think we have anybody on from enforcement who can speak to the exact process on it, but they do go out and do checks to make sure that things are being cleared. They respond to 311 complaints as well. And if our crews do see stuff out there, we do loop enforcement in. But there is dedicated service levels on active pathways, which would include specific city sidewalks, ramps, staircases, bike lanes, and those are completed as part of the priority 2 within 3 business days.
Okay. So if access during winter is the highest dissatisfaction that we hear from people living with the disabilities, then why would that not be moved into priority 1, right? And what have we done that analysis? What are the cost implications of that?
We have, and I don't have that information right at my fingertips here. However, the priority 1, what's included in there is city facilities. So that's access to city facilities. The winter priority bike loop were completed within 1 day. So bike lanes are at a higher priority than city sidewalks, ramps, and staircases, as an example.
I would be interested in knowing what that would look like if they were to be in that 1 day priority category.
We would have to look at it. It would need, as it stands now with no additional funding, it would be at a trade-off of additional service in the priority 1.
Yeah, and I would say to support that, if council would like that to be done with the cost implications, probably a direction from you would be good if we were going to take that away and take a look. Understand the question, but that would be the type of it.
Yeah, it also improves accessibility for everyone. Agreed. Everyone struggles to move around during winter. People walking outside or going to grocery stores.
Agreed. So it's a constraint and a complexity of our city, any winter city, but this one as well in terms of where those constraints are for all. I agree.
Well, maybe I'll think about that as we get into discussion. Thanks.
Councillor Tang?
Great, thank you. I've really appreciated having a bit of a frontline seat in kind of watching the engagement of this policy specifically with the committee. So just, well done, and thank you for your work over the years. I guess a few things I'm wondering, speaking of development industry, one of the things that, came up certainly very loudly in the recent State of the City address, they talked a lot about policy pileups. And kind of the cost. And, I've heard this refrain pretty frequently. And one of the policies, though not directly referenced, I think is this policy. And I think today's discussion, this is actually a recommitment to why this is important for the city. But as we just heard, it does come at, other trade-offs, whether it's cost or whatever. I guess I'm wondering if you can kind of speak to that a little bit in anticipation of some of the other reports coming up in June, like the Complete Streets.
Yeah, maybe I can start and then I'll let Pascal jump in. I think when we explore the policies that the city puts in place, this being one, these are higher level policies of intent. Mm-hmm. And then we have procedures and applications, and we take those and we look at what can we incorporate into designs. And even Michael was talking about what we aim for, strive for. Mm-hmm. Then we have to take the practical approach of what our budgets allow. What these policies do, though, rather than policy pile-up, I think they're important elements to inform how we do that collective design in the things we do. So I think we have to be careful around generalizing that a policy means actions and outcomes specifically, and how they can inform good informed designs holistically. Okay. And I think there's a difference between those in terms of how we should be guided and policies should be set by council.
Okay, great.
And so accessibility for people with disabilities is one of the policies that we integrate into the Complete Streets standards. And so from that perspective, it really is meaningful to build our neighborhoods right the first time around. And so that's really the direction that we want to provide to the designers of new neighborhoods, is to say what is important to the city, and that by making these choices in their initial design, initial construction, it does add, and we'll talk about that with the Complete Streets report, it can add costs, but it is significantly less than trying to retrofit those good universal designs in those places afterwards. And,
yeah.
so that's
And
really
that'll be before you in about a month's time.
Yeah, great. I just wanted to preempt that conversation a bit. The other thing, I think, I'm just wondering, I mean, in the presentation you talked about sort of the role the province also plays in the legislation, or the lack of legislation. I guess I'm trying to, can you just illustrate to me, like, what does that mean practically when we have, city programs and services that we're implementing C602, like, where does it run up against this gap? And how does,
Yeah, I could speak a little bit, Councillor, to the lack of provincial legislation or what gaps sort of arise.
like, how does that impact
and how does that impact what we do?
Yeah.
I will say, practically speaking, what we've tried to do as a group is to bridge the gap. Because if you look at other provinces and what the legislation has in those provinces, it really requires government bodies to make accessibility a priority and put into place plans that achieve certain outcomes vis-a-vis accessibility. So I think one of the things that we've tried to do is to the best we're able to fill that gap. Now, in other provinces, sometimes with those requirements, there's also funding. There are also things behind that to enable those municipalities or other orders of government to do the work. So perhaps if we're looking for a gap, we're doing the work to the best we can, but we maybe don't have the necessary funding to always do what other provinces might be able to do.
Yeah, and I think the city policy alone really cannot solve, even in terms of the built form, some of the accessibility concerns that I often hear about in the community. So thank you for that. And I'm assuming we are talking to folks at the provincial level about some of these challenges, and we're sharing that. Yes? No? Okay. Not very much. Okay, I hope we do, because that's really, I think that's a really important dialogue, just among other shared priorities.
I would say that one of the vehicles could be the Accessibility Advisory Committee of Council.
Okay.
They're more in that space of advocacy than we are.
I mean, we advocate for a lot of things. Oh, sorry, I'm out of time, but thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Principe.
Thank you, Chair Salvador. I felt compelled to get on and just kind of following up on Mayor Soe's discussion. I recall when we had discussed the snow clearing priority, I had brought forward the concern about accessibility with bike lanes being prioritized over sidewalks. And I was concerned because, as I'd said, this was already a couple of years ago, I said, if folks can't get to the bike lane, I think the priority should be the sidewalks. So I'm happy to hear that now it sounds like, Mr. Walbom, I believe it was you who had said that, will this be looked into now? And I'm sorry, because I feel like I'm getting maybe possibly too much into the weeds, and I apologize last time for that as well. I don't want to get too much into the weeds. However, I do think that is a concern. And from what I heard, or I would just like to get an understanding of if this is something that is being considered now.
So maybe I'll let Caitlin jump in, Councillor, just to clarify that context.
So Councillor Principe, to confirm, it's considered as part of our priority two, but we aren't looking right now at looking at changing those pieces. But I will note that we do take into consideration those high priority locations. So places like schools, hospitals, old folks homes as an example, we do prioritize those over other areas first within those priority routes. The bus stops as well, and the connectivity of those bus stops is really important. We did looking at increasing the bus stop service levels as well as the priority routes that connect those bus stops. And just to throw out rough numbers, it's close to $10 million in order to increase that from a priority perspective.
Okay, thank you. That's what I was looking for. And there's no consideration, as you said, Caitlin, of changing the priorities from bike lanes to sidewalks. It's just to increase, the resolution would be to increase the budget.
We could look at changing the priority, but we would need council direction to do that.
Right. Okay, good. Thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Councillor Wright?
Thank you very much. Caitlin, I just want to double check with you because you did mention earlier that it's not necessarily public sidewalks that the city is responsible for clearing, that could be the barrier. It's also private property owners, right?
Yeah, that would be called under the bylaw would be considered like frontage and flankage sidewalks. So anything that goes beside or in front of a private property or a private business.
Okay, so even if someone was using the snow clearing program to get their front sidewalk and I guess the public sidewalk in front of their house cleared, that's not necessarily going to guarantee them the ability to get to the bus stop, right?
That's correct. So if you have to navigate through, let's say, a route that incorporates private and public property as an example, and let's say on each bookend is city-owned sidewalks, the city would be responsible for their portion, private and residential would be responsible for theirs. So with that does come some challenges in terms of, people doing it in the same time frame, et cetera. So there is a potential risk to not having that full route necessarily cleared.
And I believe Mayor Sohi was talking about or asking about the enforcement as well. And that's just neighbors or whatever, calling 311 and getting bylaw on it?
Calling 311 through bylaw. Our crews will also report through bylaw if they do see something out there as well. So I would say the eyes and the ears are on the street, so to speak, in terms of being able to get enforcement out. Enforcement does proactively as well. If they do see things that are on their routes or if they're out doing other things, they'll see that.
Okay. And then I'm not sure who mentioned it about, I think it was in response to Councillor Tang's question about advocacy, indicating that the accessibility advisory group should be doing the advocacy.
Councillor Wright, it was me, Pascal. So what I was saying is that they are active in that realm already as part of advocacy groups, and that the the Accessibility Advisory Committee of Council members have in the past kind of taken on that role as part of their involvement in the community and as part of disability advocates.
Okay, so individually to do the advocacy because they are established as an advisory.
Correct. I was not suggesting that it's a role of the committee. I meant more of the committee members. That's good.
Okay, I just didn't want us to be backtracking from where they've come from. Okay, I think that's all. I just want a clarification on. Okay, thank you very much. That's all I have.
Thank you. Councillor Rice.
Thank you. So I have a follow-up question on Councillor Principe's questions. And she mentioned the many spots and for the accessibility and an improvement. So the one spot I would like to add on the top is about they cannot post a mailbox. And because I heard many people, at least in my area, and talk about so difficult to access to the spot, to go to get mail. So how is our city planning to really for the improvement to cover those spots? And I know it's related to snow removal and related to sidewalk clean, and also even related in the summertime. And for the sidewalk has good condition and for people to even access there safely. So I would like to have some information on that piece.
So Councillor Rice, I can let you know from a maintenance and operations perspective, we work closely with Canada Post. We have a regular stakeholder meeting, or sorry, an engagement meeting with our partners over there coming up shortly to discuss the previous winter, any areas of which that they would like some additional assistance on. So that's currently happening. Additionally, we do maintain our sidewalks on a priority basis. So based on accessibility, and that factors in areas of frequent location. So the challenge that comes into play with the Canada Post boxes is sometimes those are located on what we would call a frontage or flankage area, which would be beside potentially a private residence as an example. So in the winter clearing piece, there is some shared ownership depending on where those boxes are located. But in the summertime, if there are trip hazards, anything that's reported through 311 or through those inspections that are done from a life cycle management perspective, those are prioritized to address any displacements within the sidewalk place.
Thank you. And even though we have this implementation and tools in the place, and then what's the indicator or measures, and we could reduce the complaint or emails, phone calls received from people say we still cannot safely access to the Canada Post boxes. So how we address that type of things instead of reactive, or is there any proactive actions or plan and in the place?
Are you referring to snow and ice clearing? Or are you referring
both
to
summertime and wintertime? And because summertime is more about the sidewalks conditions so bad, and people even like with some wheelchair and it has challenge even to get there. And wintertime, of course, that's obvious. And for the icing roads and the snow did not clean. And even I personally walked in the wintertime and on this road, like you mentioned, the location. And then if this location is a shared responsibility, what is the way we make sure those shared responsibilities implemented and then make roads cleaned and then snow removed and cleaned the ice and for people to safely access.
Councillor, maybe it's Craig here. Maybe I'll jump in too. I appreciate Caitlin's answers around how we try to prioritize and provide that service. I think in terms of what we're here for today, in terms of the broader policy and guidance, that's kind of where we've kind of started the conversation. And we brought Caitlin in just to give a sense of what those service levels are today. It feels like we're getting into the realm of conversation around if those service levels are adequate or appropriate, or if council would like those to be explored and reviewed. And I think Caitlin mentioned, and so did I, that this really gets into a service level standard conversation and even related to structural budget issues and how the city's trying to prioritize budgets within all of that. When it comes to specific individual locations, I'm sure Caitlin would agree that happy to take that offline and find out if there's specific areas for that. But beyond what Caitlin's mentioned at the higher level, prioritization within current service levels, I think we're really into the realm of exploring if that needs to change, and that would need council direction.
Okay, thank you. That's my question.
Thank you. Councillor Rutherford.
Yeah, thanks. I'm gonna bring us back to the policy discussion at hand in front of us right now. How is reasonable assessed within this for the duty to accommodate? In the section around the employer, it says career development and reasonable accommodation. How do we, based on this policy, how would we interpret reasonable?
I think it would depend on the circumstance, Councillor. Reasonable just means that there's not necessarily one way to do it or one prescribed way to do it, but that we have to make good faith efforts or explore different opportunities to ensure that we do our best to accommodate. So I don't think we can say there's one specific approach necessarily. Okay. And then I wanted to go back to, and is it going to let me go back is the question, to the policy itself, the way the policy is drafted, and it references Canadian accessibility best practices, correct?
Correct.
But I don't see, like when I was doing a search for that, there's nothing that comes up. So what is the citation source? Because like, is it that Accessible Canada Act? Because that's different than what I would think would be. Yeah, I'm just wondering what the site source for that is, because it doesn't seem to reference anything specific in the policy or linked to any specific guidance on that.
With the Accessible Canada Act, the Accessibility Standards Canada was established. So when we speak to Canadian accessibility best practices, we were referring to the standards that are in draft and also published by the Accessibility Standards Canada, but we will make it clear in the policy. That's what we are referring to.
Yeah, so I don't know if you need an amendment or something to make that that amendment, because I when I read through the policy, it wasn't clear to me. It sounded like we were referencing sort of two things: the city best practices, and then there was a citation link to that. When I searched, just did some quick searching, no specific site source came up for that. So I just think when we're referencing items like that in policy, they should link to something very specific. So I don't know if we need an amendment to that.
I'm just going to check with the clerk. I do believe that we need a formal amendment to change the policy between committee and council.
That's correct.
So we'll draft something for you, Councillor Rutherford.
Okay, and then since I'm going to be moving an amendment anyway, I would also say I would prefer a motion related to, at least for the first year, this coming back as a report as opposed to a memo. And I know Mr. Walbaum said that wasn't necessary to do that, but I'm just very mindful of the turnover and continuity that may or may not exist after October. And so my preference would be for that to also be explicitly given as direction.
And that's fine with me, of course, Councillor.
Yeah. And then I guess just one broad question left to Mr. Gunther is what is in your interpretation the substantive difference in this modified policy to what we have currently? Because to me it reads like a little bit softer, and I maybe understand the logic between that, but I want to have full eyes wide open in terms of what are the legal and legislative differences between the original policy we had in place and this new revised ones that we're contemplating implementing today.
Yes, what I will say is a lot of the change actually comes into the procedure and some of the surrounding documents. In terms of the policy itself, as you'll note, there is some softer language here. Part of the reason for that is not to downplay or take away from the importance in any way of accessibility and the accessibility work that we're doing, but just making sure that we are not binding ourselves to being committed to one specific approach, or to put accessibility as something that would not necessarily, I'll say, that it needs to factor in as a consideration, but it can't overtake or always be the number one consideration if there are budgetary implications as well. So you'll see some softer language. In terms of the legal implications, it is a policy, it's not legislation, so we do have some flexibility, but policies can always dictate the standard that we are obliged to hold ourselves to. So just having some more flexibility allows us to be better situated to balance different considerations.
Okay, thank you. I'm out of time.
Thank you. Mayor Sohi.
Thank you. So how does this policy kind of intersect with other goals? For example, we have a goal of making sure that our workforce is reflective of our community. How would this allow us to advance that work? And how do we measure that we're actually hiring people who are living with disabilities? That's one. And the related one is how this relates to our procurement policy. Economic growth opportunities for people living with disabilities.
Thanks, Mayor Sohi. So considering this policy as an update, I think those expectations continue. I can speak more to procurement because that's where I've worked previously. And so I think this policy helps to support, but I think we also have complementary policies such as the sustainable procurement policy that drive those pieces of work. Around the hiring piece and having a more diverse workforce, this policy really focuses on reducing the barriers for those folks to come and work for the city of Edmonton and to be in a workspace that doesn't barrier them.
But the results in the future should demonstrate that more people living with disabilities are working at the city, that they're procuring more services or bidding on, if they're in business, bidding on city contracts. Is that how we measure the success?
Yeah, we didn't bring anyone from CPSS. I know that there's been some work on how those sustainability policies as well as our accessibility policy over time should influence that. So that would be a takeaway.
So would that be part of annual reports, like it's showing the results? This is how we are moving forward in building an equitable city for everyone.
Yeah, I'm not sure how much of that would be in this accessibility policy update. This would be more around the actions of changes we're making, but it's something that could be taken away to look at what CPSS is doing in terms
just
of that
to see,
broader
like
trending.
we need to monitor the progress. We need to show that progress to the community.
And Mr. Mayor, if I may add as well, we have this policy which is the overarching framework, but in conjunction with this work, there's also been a lot of accessibility action planning where actually each department has set forth its priorities, including the employee services group that is working on some of these projects in terms of accessibility as it pertains to characteristics in the workforce. So this work is taking place in the organization, but in terms of the framework or the policy, which is the highest level document, that wouldn't necessarily be captured. It just enables and prioritizes that work to be done.
Yeah. What I'm interested in is just the results, right? And those results also include employment, jobs, reflection of our workforce, but also barriers, discrimination that people with disabilities face, right? So I think that's what I'll leave that with you guys to figure it out. So a couple of other questions. So universal design and accessibility design will apply to future buildings.
Well, so through the access design standards that we have for the city, they apply to future constructions, but also retrofits and renewal.
Got it. Yep. Okay, good. And I will be making a motion on increasing the service standards on public sidewalks, similar to bike lanes, not at the cost of bike lanes. For me, it's not either or, it's both, right? So I know clerk is working on some wording to that, so I will be making that, and also enforcement on snow clearing on private properties. Good. Thank you.
Great. Okay. I've noticed that we have some more special guests joining us today, also from College Heights Christian School, and we have the grade 6 class with Mr. J. Koch. Hi, thanks for joining us today, and you are from Ward Nakota Iska. So we're in a committee meeting right now, which means I'm chairing, but there is someone who is probably a lot more exciting than I am right over here, who is Mayor Sohi. And I'm going to turn the floor over to him for a second to welcome you here.
I'm not more exciting. I just happen to be the mayor, that's it, right? So how are you? Come on. That's not really enthusiasm that I expected. How are you doing? That is better. That is better. Right. So how are the Oilers going to do tonight? They're going to win? Okay, well, we'll see. All right. Okay, I hope they do. So are you doing a mock console? Oh, yes, you already did. The other class is doing it now, right? Your grade 9 class is doing it now. So you already done your mock council. So that means you already had selected a mayor. I'm going to ask the mayor, your selected mayor, to come down to the podium. This is the fun part of this job. Okay, your worship, can you tell us your name first?
I'm Brielle.
Brielle, so what did you discuss at your mock council?
We were discussing if kids should be allowed to vote on important issues.
If kids should be allowed to vote on important issues, any age restrictions or any?
Ages 10 and up.
Ages 10 and up, okay. What did you decide?
It was unanimous. Everyone was against it.
What? Wow, that is surprising coming from kids. Okay, we would love to know why. What were some of the arguments in favor or against? Not now, right? Because we got to carry on. So if you could send us some information through your teacher, like what were some of the arguments in favor and against, send that to my office and I'll share that with my council colleagues. Cool. Thank you so much for joining us. Lovely to see you. All right, back to Chair Salvador.
Great, thank you so much, and feel free to stick around and listen to our discussion today. We're talking about a really important one, how to create an accessible city for everyone. So I'll take a round as well. I do have an amendment, and hang on just one sec, let me pull up the wording. And it's just to, here we go. Administration should have the wording as well, as does the clerk. So it is under the policy statement to create awareness, creating awareness, encouraging, and collaborating with community groups, businesses, institutions, and organizations to incorporate accessibility in their programs, services, practices, developments, and infrastructure. And I'll just take a moment for that to pop up.
We're just loading it now.
Awesome. And I'll just take a moment to introduce as well. So this is just in direct response to what we heard from our speakers this morning. Just want to ensure that language around collaboration is embedded in the intent and statement for this policy. I see that the inclusion of community groups as well as businesses, institutions, and organizations is already in there. But beyond creating awareness and encouraging, I think language around collaboration is also deeply important. There we go. So any questions on this? Not seeing any.
Sorry, point of order. I can't sign up to speak and I can't type fast enough to.
Go ahead, Councillor Rutherford.
I apologize. I feel very at a disadvantage right now. Should I be adding, like just as in one motion, should I also be adding the other changes as amendments to your motion, or would we prefer them as separate motions?
I'll just look to the clerk. What's the preferred process?
It would be preferred to address them separately.
Separately?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, that's all my questions. Sorry.
All good.
Jumping on.
No problem. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions. Anyone to speak to this? Councillor Rutherford, now you are on the board. Are you? Are you?
No, I don't want to speak to this.
Okay, great. So if nothing further, yeah, I'll just close by saying I think this is a relatively minor change in wording, but an important change in wording, just to embed that collaborative language into the intent behind this policy. And want to thank the speakers who came out this morning to flag this, and very happy to see that we were able to action something from it. Great. Please vote.
We have all the votes.
Please display the vote. That's carried. Thank you. I don't believe there was anyone else on the board, but Councillor Rutherford, I understand you have an amendment. And then Mayor Sohi has a motion as well. So I'll go to
That'll be
Councillor
probably
Rutherford.
subsequent. Mine will be subsequent.
Councillor Rutherford, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't have the wording yet from administration on that, so I'm not sure.
We're still working on that.
Anyone
How to
else?
proceed.
Maybe I'll ask him another question.
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah. So I want to come back to the advocacy part, particularly on the accessibility legislation. What role you think we can play? Maybe this is too legal. Maybe we might have to think more about it. Like what can, maybe this is intergovernmental conversation during that during council. There is a need for advocacy. I think Alberta is the only province that doesn't have accessibility legislation. What role we can play?
I think it's a joint conversation for intergov and legal. And I think what we would need to do is to really look closely at what does the provincial accessibility legislation enable that we could not do? And then ultimately, where are those gaps and where are those things being done at a provincial level that are being downloaded to municipalities? And if we're able to say, here are the things specifically that municipalities end up holding responsibility for that should be dealt with at the provincial level, then that allows us as legal and intergov to really advocate for those things or encourage council to advocate for specific things as opposed to just saying accessibility needs to be a priority, which is a truth, but at the same time, I don't think provides enough specificity for us to provide feedback.
Okay, so maybe we'll pursue this conversation at the intergovernmental table. Right?
Yeah, I think that would be the best path forward.
Got
Mr.
it,
Mayor.
got it. And how about the clawback of Canada Disability Benefits? My understanding is that whatever, I think it's $200 extra being provided by the federal government to deal with the affordability challenges that people with disabilities are facing, but that money is actually being clawed back by the provincial government, so they won't be able to access that money. Or
yeah, and I'll say that is my understanding at the same level as yours likely is. I haven't delved into the wording of the legislation, but my understanding is that is the implication of what's happening right now.
Okay, maybe that could be a conversation at an intergovernmental as well. Okay, got it. Okay, that's I needed to know. Yeah.
Great, thank you. I'll just check to see if we have the wording for Councillor Rutherford's amendment.
I've just shared in council chat.
Hello, to Chair Salvador.
Yep.
I don't love that wording. This is the first time I'm seeing it, so I'm gonna read it in better. I'm gonna say that Community and Public Services Committee amend policy 602A to cite source Canadian best practices as referenced in the policy. And 2, report back on the progress of the implementation of the policy after 1 year.
Okay, we'll just ensure that we were able to capture that wording so that it can get up on the board. One moment. Maybe while that's coming up, Councillor Rutherford, would you like to introduce?
Yeah, very, very simple. I know it seems like a small detail, but when it comes to policy, details matter. And so even simple word changes, simple lack of site sources can lead to confusion, and we definitely don't want that with any policy. So this is why I think it's really important to say, where are we taking those cues from, and making sure it's clear to anybody that reads the policy where they get those cues from. The second part is, as mentioned, I've heard the desire from some of my other committee colleagues that we want to see the progress on this and see and follow this through, especially with the implementation plan that's coming forward. And while memos are good, memos don't allow for the public to contribute. And I think we need to make sure we give space for folks that are most impacted by action or lack of inaction on this policy to be able to speak to committee or council. And so that was my intent with the second part.
Great, thank you.
And I had split those up to clerk into two separate, because as it reads right now, it looks like I'm saying report back on that amendment. So I just want that to be clear, like two separate directives.
Great, thank you for that clarity. And just to reiterate that, looking for two separate points so that the second bullet is not just referencing the first, but for the work to come back in its entirety after 1 year. Okay, any questions? Not seeing any. I do have one, maybe just to the mover. Just the language around coming back after 1 year as opposed to annual. Maybe this is a detail, but my desire would be to see an opportunity on an ongoing annual basis to have this conversation. Is that your intention as well, or to just come back after the 1 year?
I was on mute. Yeah, I think for me, I have the same intentionality. If we're not seeing the progress we'd like to make, I think at the time we can direct that. But I think given what we heard and the intention from administration, just making sure that intention is matching the action at that annual check-in, and then giving either further direction from there was what I was thinking. The intention of this was really that while admin said they didn't need a motion, I wanted to make sure that this was on the books for continuity, with changes potential in October. But I'm amenable to either.
Okay, and maybe just to administration, I appreciate that clarity. Difference between coming back 1 year versus just setting that expectation that there will be sort of that annual opportunity to have a check-in?
Yeah, since this is here, if the intent is to have annual updates, I would suggest that we could change 1 year to annually, and then we can navigate as we go as well.
Okay, that might be my preference. Is that friendly?
Yep.
Yeah.
To me, it is.
Okay, and looking around the table, not seeing anyone objecting. So if we can just make that change, that would be wonderful. And no further questions from me. Okay, Councillor Rutherford to close? Or anyone else to speak to this? Nothing further? Okay, please vote.
We will mark Mayor Sohi absent. And we have all the votes.
Display the vote. That's carried. Okay, so we've gotten through the amendments. I understand there's a subsequent as well. We do need to move the motion, I believe, just as amended, potentially we should add for wording to the clerk.
That's correct.
Councillor Stevenson?
Thank you. I'll move that Community and Public Services Committee recommend to City Council that Council Policy Accessibility for People with Disabilities C602A as amended, as set out, I don't know where amended best fits. So as set out in amended attachment 1 of the May 12, 2025 Integrated Infrastructure Services Report, IS 02803, be approved.
Great, thank you. So we have a motion on the floor. Anyone to speak? Councillor Tang? Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you for this work. I think about in the past, as So I'm the council representative on the Accessibility Advisory Committee, and I've seen your team bring this presentation to the committee frequently, and I feel like there are very few like city teams whose first names are so familiar to committee members as this one. And I think that also speaks to, I think, just like the long-term commitment and relationship you have developed. So I just want to give you, a shout out for that. And I think that, as the AAC chair did mention, I think it is a model, and but that comes, that's hard work and that's investment of time into kind of frequently visiting and touching base and checking in, and I think that's really important way of engagement. And I do hope to see that more often with other city policies. I guess I just want to touch on a few things that came up. One is around this sort of advocacy role that we can play. I'm glad that Mayor Sohi asked this line of questioning, because I think we advocate on a lot of things to the provincial government. And this has been one where, you're right, individuals from the community, from the committee, have been very active in, but no more I think about it, more I think there's a role perhaps for the city council that we can play. A couple years ago, the Accessibility Committee actually identified specifically mental health and addiction and houselessness as part of the accessibility conversation, because there is just so much intersectionality and it's hard to tease them out. So I would welcome that that conversation about how we can play that supporting role to the community as a whole. I am anticipating, more discussion about our accessibility policy along with others in the upcoming June conversation. And maybe just to reflect some thoughts there from what I've heard from committee members, as well as how can we be more creative in achieving universal and accessible design, given some of that cost considerations and competing priorities, and that we're not compromising some of those pieces. And I know this is a conversation your team is thinking about, Craig, but I just want to take this moment to highlight that. And then finally, I didn't quite I sort of missed the opportunity to kind of ask questions about some of our current practice around, say, Abilities at Work program, which is a really critical way of, I think, implementing this policy in the day-to-day in terms of employment with the city. But I understand throughout the pandemic there has been some challenges, and now we're slowly kind of coming back, and there's been lots of conversations with different community groups who support workplaces to be more inclusive of folks with disabilities and accessibility needs, and I look forward to see that work continue, and I hope again this policy reiterates our commitment to this space, and and hopefully sets the tone for that for some of those conversations as well. So those are just the different areas I want to highlight: engagement, advocacy, workplace, and kind of this notion of competing priorities but not compromising them. Thank you very much for all the work today, and I appreciate the very robust policy conversation that the committee just had.
Thank you. Councillor Rutherford.
Yeah, thank you. I'm really excited to see this policy come forward and to see it iterate in the way it has. While a lot of the conversation today is focused on infrastructure, and I know the conversation is intersected with complete streets and policy pileup, I really want to reinforce for me that the implications of this policy should be a number one priority. It was mentioned, that we weigh it against other things. Accessibility to me is a non-negotiable. It is actually an obligation that we as a city have under our Charter of Human Rights. And so if we are weighing trade-offs around things, I actually think this this priority policy should actually be the top. And so I'm looking forward to furthering that conversation when we do talk about the complete streets and those things with infrastructure. But I think for me, where I have seen the biggest barriers to the city and to making it a city that's inclusive for everyone is actually around our services and programs. We did the audit, and I was so glad we did that audit related to accessibility in rec centers, and I know you're actioning that work. But, you know, we talked a lot today about snow clearing, and I've been a big advocate for, you know, highlighting the fact that, like, we're talking about sidewalks, our bus stops are a priority 3. Our bus stops. They are not cleared in a reasonable amount of time for people to be able to access something that we are investing in to be able to get around the city. And I've said this to my colleagues on multiple occasions, and that's the inquiry and the reference that Caitlin had to that. I also want to highlight that not all bike lanes are priority 1. So I think that this misinformation from some of my colleagues that we're choosing bike lanes over sidewalks is also not a fair assessment. But we also have done some really great work. You know, I think about the assisted snow clearing program and some of the calls that I've received from residents with disabilities that have expressed how this has been life-changing for them this last winter. I think about working with ETS and an organization that helps folks that are deaf and hard of hearing, and making accommodation for ETS with those disability needs in mind. And we need more of that. We need more of that. And I hope this policy pushes us towards that, because I think our services and programs are the heart of what a municipality is, and really everyone benefits when we make things accessible to those that need it the most. So very excited for this to go forward, and I'm very excited too that we're going to have the annual reporting on this, because I do think it is such a pertinent topic to make sure we're not only getting it, but we're getting it right. And in terms of advocacy, I agree completely with my colleagues. We need to be doing better advocacy to other orders of government within any capacity and within our role. Some of the things I've seen in some of the policy and legislative shifts from other orders of government have been having severe adverse effects on our disability community. And I think we need to stand alongside them in those conversations too. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Sohi?
Yeah, I want to start by first of all thanking the members of the committee, members of the community who participated and shared their views with us. Their input is absolutely essential, and I also want to thank everyone at the Accessibility Advisory Committee for their ongoing work and city staff who supports them. So thank you so much, and also to our administration. We all know that large number of Edmontonians do face one or more disabilities, and this number is expected to grow with an aging population. These disabilities can be permanent or temporary, and people with disabilities, we all know that people who live with disabilities face many barriers restricting their independence and the choices and their ability to participate in the community. For me, building an equitable city is a fundamental responsibility of our collective work. We have moved forward in many ways, and I'll share one beautiful experience that I was able to see at Meadows Rec Center, where a young boy with cognitive disabilities was provided one-on-one support by our city staff. And that allowed that kid to participate and get in the pool and be supported. I think that is the kind of city that we need to build that provides fully accessible and appropriate services for Edmontonians. We have the capacity to do it. But we have a long way to go yet. and look forward to the work. There are intersecting policies that we have been talking about for a long time, whether it's related to employment, whether it's related to access to services, whether it's related to access to procurement and other opportunities that city provides. So look forward to that conversation as well. So I want to thank everyone, and absolutely one prominent barrier that I have heard over and over and over again is physical access, whether it's access to buildings, but predominantly access to our public infrastructure and amenities during winter time. People not maintaining their sidewalks properly, private sidewalks, and city not clearing publicly owned pathways and sidewalks on time. So I'm going to be making the subsequent motion. I hope that committee will support that too, because we need to up that game. We have invested more in snow and ice, which was absolutely willfully underfunded. And we put a lot of money into it, but more needs to be done in order to reverse the trends of shortchanging our public services to keep in the past to deal with some of the challenges that previous councils had faced. But we are trying to catch up, but more needs to be done in order to build a city that's truly accessible city. Yeah. So with that, look forward to that conversation.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Yeah, I really agree with everything that's been said by my colleagues, and that we do have a responsibility to ensure that everyone has an opportunity to fully participate, thrive, and belong in our city. Everyone should be able to move through our city with confidence year-round. So I look forward to the subsequent from Mayor Sohi on that front. We know that an inclusive, barrier-free city benefits all of us because, as was shared earlier, at different points in all of our lives, we experience different levels of need when it comes to accessibility and access. Our public buildings, infrastructure, communication, transportation, everything must be fully accessible. And as Councillor Rutherford said, it's a non-negotiable. When I think about accessibility and inclusive design, I see it as being foundational to the well-being of our neighborhoods and our communities. And really, it's about ensuring dignity and ease of access for everyone. I'm excited to know that we've made some really excellent progress, and I think the work in front of us today provides a good roadmap and direction for continuing that good work to move us forward alongside our excellent partners, and want to take a moment to recognize the Accessibility Advisory Committee for their ongoing service and insights and advice on important policies like C602, and it's really great to know and to hear from Councillor Tang that there's an established relationship there and frequent conversations and collaborations with our administration. And I think that really speaks to how embedded the value of inclusion and equity and accessibility is within the organization. So thank you for that. Also wanted to just thank the folks from the Alberta Ave Street team for coming out today. Really appreciate your thoughts and reflections and advice for how there can be even more collaboration between city staff and folks like yourselves who are on the ground and see some of these challenges and barriers every day within our communities. So yeah, thank you everyone for the excellent dialogue and conversation today. Councillor Stevenson, to close.
I would just echo the great comments of my colleagues, and you know, I think the comment that if we live long enough, we all experience a disability, I think is very powerful. And to remember as well that it's also not just about our own physical capabilities, but also if we're pushing strollers or kids are riding scooters, there's a very, very broad sector of the community that, well, being the whole community, that's well served when these policies are in place. I'm pleased with the progress and the commitment to continue working along this path. Thank you.
Please vote.
Yes.
Thank you, Councillor Rutherford. We have all the votes.
Please display the vote. That's carried.
Can I break protocol for just 1 second? I should have done this at the start. I just wanted to acknowledge the administrative staff on this. Yogi, who you've seen here today, in person, Heather, who's not here, Michael, Roger, Pascal. The amount of work and energy and commitment to this has got us to here today. And I should have done it at the start, but I wanted to acknowledge them and everyone involved. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for speaking up and saying that, and absolutely huge kudos to the team for this phenomenal work. Like I said, it's very evident that there's a deep commitment, and that was reiterated by our speakers today and the conversation, so thank you. Mayor Sohi.
Okay, I do have a subsequent here it is. Can you put it up or you want me to read in the record? That administration provide a report outlining options and the budget implications for amending its snow and ice control procedures as developed based on City Policy C490K and sidewalk maintenance programs to prioritize city-maintained sidewalks for snow clearing at Priority 1 service level near areas of high importance to increase accessibility, prioritize Priority 3 bus stops to increase service levels to Priority 2 service levels in areas of high importance to increase accessibility, increase enforcement for snow and ice clearing for private frontage and flankage snow removal, prioritize repairs of sidewalks near areas of high importance to increase accessibility.
Great, thank you. Would you like to introduce?
Yeah, I think I raised these during the questions to administration. It is very, very important that we continue to invest in our core municipal services, and snow and ice is one of the corest municipal services that we have and that we have a responsibility to provide, and not fully providing that service to the acceptable standards leaves many people behind, particularly people who experience, people who live with the disabilities, that they're not able to fully participate in the community life, unable to get out and access services and programs, access employment, and public sidewalks are not clear to the standards expected, and private properties also not clear to the standards accepted, and there are other barriers as well. So I think this will help us have that conversation in August and hopefully advance it to the level that we are prioritizing those underfunded areas of snow and ice.
Great, thank you. I believe Councillor Rutherford, are you trying to get on the board?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for this motion. And I know I've been especially a big advocate, as mentioned in my closing, about Priority 3 to increase that. And one of my questions, though, to you is under the points you talk about areas of high importance. How are we defining high importance?
I'll go to it.
So the mover.
I think administration would be able to give you that answer based on the criteria they follow.
Sure. Well, what's your intention of it?
My intention would be that our city should be accessible, doesn't matter where you live. So I don't know how they identify high priority areas, but I think we should be clearing sidewalks, all the public sidewalks, as Priority 1, doesn't matter where they are. So I guess
to administration, how would you interpret that? Because I'll ask that question and then I'll follow up with another question.
So Councillor Rutherford, high priority locations would be areas near transit centers, schools, hospitals, senior residence, medical centers, public areas such as rec centers, etc. So those would be your high areas of importance where we would have larger portions of people trying to access or get to and from those areas.
Yeah, so that's what I'm worried about. Okay. And I thought that we already did prioritize those areas above other sidewalks and bus stops?
We do, and the intent of this would be to look at where there's lower priority in the vicinity of those high priority locations to be able to have those so that they're connected. So as an example, if you have priority 1 and then maybe a gap and then a priority 2 in another area, can we increase the corresponding service level near there in order to allow it point A to point B to be accessible?
Okay, so what I've seen in my time on council is when we've reprioritized, we've shifted to high importance or priority things, is that those don't necessarily and we've just talked about the accessibility policy. They don't take into account social vulnerability. They don't take into account, 311 complaints and reports related to accessibility or any of those things. And so how do I ensure that if this report is coming back in August, that it includes those considerations as well?
So Councillor Rutherford, back in 2023, we had actually presented at that time a sidewalk maintenance strategy that pulled in social vulnerability. And there was 10 different factors of that. So socioeconomic, demographics, as well as all the things that you talked about just there. So we would include that as part of this. So not only is it high priority locations, but pulling a social vulnerability index as well to have that as part of the consideration. Including 311 data, demand data of pedestrian, where they're walking, where the most frequently used areas, et cetera.
Because what you said before didn't align with that, right? Like, 'cause those can be at odds sometimes.
Potentially, yeah, they potentially can be, but we can absolutely make sure that there's social vulnerability as a consideration.
Yeah, and I definitely would want to see that, and yeah, okay. And so I don't need to amend this motion for that to be an expectation of content that will be in that report.
I don't think so, but I would defer to the clerk to see if we would need that in there.
That direction, if it's required by administration, should be given, but that, again, it's at the discretion of administration, what their needs are.
And it sounds like you understand the intent, and so I can expect that. Okay. Okay, that helps. That was my only question.
Thank you. Councillor Stevenson?
Thank you very much. As part of this report back, would it be possible for administration to share the number of staff-generated reports for snow clearing? I think that's interesting that program exists, or that directive exists. I think what I hear often from communities is just sort of that reporting burden is quite something to take on. So is it possible for us to get a sense of how often that's happening now and opportunities to expand that potentially within our staff complement?
Councillor Stevenson, could you do the question one more time? I apologize.
No, that's all right. I'm just thinking of the, so for Center City optimization, for example, we saw stats in terms of the number of 311 tickets that were submitted by members of the public versus staff members. And I was really impressed by that because, city staff are submitting a huge number of those tickets. I think that's really positive. It helps remove the burden from residents. I'm wondering, you mentioned earlier that staff do submit tickets if private sidewalks aren't being cleared. Just wondering if we could get a sense of the magnitude of that as part of this work.
So I think just to highlight the difference with Center City is they have a proactive inspection service level and as well as the reactive inspection service level. So Center City is set up differently than the other district operations. So in the event that a staff would report it would go through the same 301 process as anybody else. So whether they end up submitted under their name or under a different name, it would go in through the stream of prioritization to enforcement. I don't know how easily it would be to pull that out necessarily, but if we look at in terms of like sidewalk maintenance as an example, we do track if there's additional repairs that are needed or that were noted by our district inspectors. But just for awareness, in our districts, there's 5 across the city and we only have 2 inspectors per district.
Gotcha. Okay, well, I think I'm hugely supportive of this motion, particularly point 3 around the enforcement. And I think if there could be some discussion around options for staff to be doing more of that reporting, just if there could be some consideration as part of that third bullet, I think that would add a lot to the conversation. And I just want to ensure as well, particularly around the enforcement, I know that we have a few motions out right now looking at traffic enforcement. I know that some of that work is more seasonal in nature, so just want to ensure as well that, if this does lead to a service package, for example, that there's some alignment or discussion between those various enforcement packages to ensure that we're not kind of double counting or double investing in the enforcement resources that we might need for different times of the year. Is that possible? I don't know if that's too, there.
Yeah, I guess I'll try and answer that. I've been around and hearing some of those others. I think we do have to reflect on who would be doing this enforcement versus the others and look at that complement for sure as a collective. I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, and just trying to think again, if we want people out there being really proactive for snow clearing, obviously we need something for them to do during the summers. I think there probably is lots for them to be doing, not to, pitch noisy vehicles, but just making sure that there is some thought and the complementariansness of that. But that's it. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Not seeing any further questions. Anyone to speak to this? Mayor Sohi to close?
Oh, nothing to add.
Okay, please vote.
We have all the votes.
Display the vote. That's carried. Great, thank you. Okay. All right, so we are done with 7.1. We have just under half an hour left before we hit lunch, but we can move to 7.2, concept approval of name sales. So we'll just change out our administrative delegation here. Great. Well, good morning, and we'll turn it over to you for a presentation.
Thank you. My name is Jennifer Flaman. I'm the DCM of Community Services, and today administration is recommending that Community and Public Services Committee recommend to City Council the approval to sell facility naming rights to all city-owned and operated sport and recreation facilities, including internal assets, which are amenities within the facilities. The request outlined in the report before you today is in alignment with the work approved by Council in the Fiscal Gap Strategies Work Plan. If approved, it is anticipated that the proposed name sales could generate up to $21 million in revenue in the next 10 years after related costs and expenses, providing valuable financial support for the City of Edmonton. I'll now invite Priya, Director of Aquatics and Community Leisure Centers, who is here today to represent CRC on behalf of Roger Jevney. Priya will provide further information on this matter.
Thank you, Jen. Operating costs for city facilities are increasing. New sources of revenue are required to limit fee increases for facility patrons and residents and the potential need for additional tax levy investments. Selling naming rights could help the city offset or prevent potential increases in the short term. Many municipalities are finding new ways to raise revenues without increasing taxes. One way is by selling the naming rights to city-owned buildings and spaces, including assets within those buildings. This means a company pays the city for the right to put its name on a building, like a recreation center, a gymnasium, a pool, a multipurpose room, or even a sports field. Administration has examined opportunities in other municipalities and has learned that many other municipalities, including St. Albert, Sherwood Park, Spruce Grove, Warrenville, Leduc, Victoria, Regina, and Winnipeg, are pursuing name sales for facilities and amenities. This arrangement benefits all parties involved, including the city and the company. The city gains revenue to help with operating costs, which can help keep fees lower for community members while the company is granted time-limited rights to promote its name and brand in a prominent location within the community. Public feedback from engagement in 2020 and 2024 suggests that Edmonton's community members are open to the city exploring alternative funding options such as selling facility naming rights. From a corporate brand perspective, the proposed agreement ensures that the city will retain the primary facility brand with the application of appropriate amenity level branding. This approach will ensure the city continues to protect the value and reputation of its corporate brand as it relates to the larger facility. Administration will adhere to all required procedures associated with City Policy C477A, facility name sale, including public opinion research, proponent review, and consultation with the naming committee, and all agreements will be in the form acceptable to the city manager. Should council approve the recommendations in the report, administration will work with partners to identify potential sponsors and negotiate agreements. Each negotiated agreement will then be advanced to council for consideration and approval. Thank you. We are happy to take any questions that you may have.
Thank you. This was selected by Councillor Stevenson. Would you like to go ahead?
Yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate the report and appreciate the work the administration is doing to find alternative revenue sources. I know that previous council had provided some direction around some of the name sales, and that had been budgeted into our 4-year budget. My understanding is that at this point, this revenue has not been budgeted for. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So maybe in the interest of time, I personally am not interested in pursuing these naming opportunities further. Again, appreciate the rationale and the work that's gone into it at this point. I'm just wondering what the appropriate action is at this moment. It is a city council decision, so I'm not sure if requisition is appropriate, or if committee is able to give direction, for example, that we recommend to city council to no longer pursue naming rights. And then if others have other thoughts, they can select it at council, but if not, that recommendation would just pass. To clerks?
Can you please repeat the question?
Yeah, so at this moment, my preference would be to not pursue this work any further. It is a council decision. So, one option, of course, would be to requisition without a recommendation. I'm just wondering if it's possible for committee to potentially vote on a recommendation to not pursue these naming right options.
Thank you for the question. So committee has two options. They can put the current motion on the floor and defeat it, which ultimately then does not cause anything else to happen with this item.
Yep.
Or committee could requisition to council and have council discuss and debate.
And we're not able to recommend a different direction to council? I'm just mindful that if we requisition, then the item has to be selected. However, if we send with a different direction from committee, then it wouldn't need to be selected.
So yes, committee does have that option to recommend a different recommendation.
Okay, I see Clerk Griesbach may have a thought.
Yeah, thank you very much for the opportunity to comment. So one option council or committee does have is you could actually put a motion on the floor to receive this for information.
But then that wouldn't allow council, our colleagues not here today, to weigh in any way. Is that correct?
That's true, but council can always take back jurisdiction from committee. So in addition to the two options that Arlene's already provided, I was just giving you a third path forward, right. But absolutely you could put the motion on the floor and see what happens, but you could also receive it for information.
And if we receive for information, it wouldn't need to wait a year if someone wanted to bring this forward in another venue. Is that correct? Because we're not actually, or does this count as defeating the matter?
So this is one of the benefits of receiving something for information. It isn't actually a decision. It's just not giving direction to advance.
Okay. Okay, well, I will hear from other colleagues and make a decision from there. Thank you.
Councillor Tang, go ahead.
Great. Before a motion puts on, I just wanted to kind of maybe, I have some questions and wanted to share some thoughts. Yeah, thank you for the report. I think kind of going from some of the specific naming recognition to to say now all does feel, I guess, a bit of a shock, but I appreciate that you're just following direction and this is a way to diversify our revenue. I guess I'm wondering about sort of how do you feel this will impact how people would view the city as a provider of rec centers or rec services, as an example. When we have, just in terms of that brand recognition, we have a very strong brand. City of Edmonton has a very strong brand reputation. We deliver these services, and when we do give that sort of that name away, do you feel this will impact how people perceive us?
I'll start by responding that we've been rather impressed with the sophistication of our users, that they're very aware of the brand and whose money, theirs, has paid for these facilities. And that's not what we've encountered at all. But I will pass it over to the team.
Can you elaborate on that when you say sophistication of the users? Like, is that in an engagement feedback? Is that kind of the general feedback you receive at the front counters, for example?
Yeah, and the lack of, right?
Yeah.
So we actually asked, with the booster juice naming of Terwillegar, we actually asked the leadership there, are you hearing any concerns? Is anyone coming up to you voicing any confusion? And the answer is no. So anecdotally, day to day, and I've been asking folks to track that because I remember this was a concern that was flagged before by this council. So we have been very attentive, listening right at not the doorstep, but at our counters to hear if there are any moments of confusion or lack of clarity.
Yeah. Anything else you want to add, or?
I would just add to that, certainly what we've seen in some of the engagement that we've undertaken is an understanding by the public of the importance of this. It builds connection with business to the community, and that's recognized. And so I think there are some advantages to this as well.
And if I can just add one more point to your earlier question around all of the facilities, we're just seeking permission to explore. Any actual contract or agreement would always come back to council for final review and approval.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm open to that exploration. And I will say, I was at the Booster Juice headquarter opening, which is in my ward, and this example actually came up. And, I think it gave that particular business community, an opportunity to really proudly say about this connection with the city of Edmonton. That wasn't something I was expecting, but I was really pleased to see that. The other question I had was, I see Millwoods Rec Center, for example. It's, has a very unique history compared to some of our other rec centers. There's a community built, right, through MacArthur, but handed over to the city to operate. So when you have something like that, when volunteers and residents really take pride in the name, how do we mitigate some of that concern when we talk about potentially changing that?
Yeah, well, I'll just start by saying every situation is unique, and we are very cognizant of the history and the context of each of those spaces and locations to ensure that we honor the previous work, but I'll let Kim respond.
Yeah, I think that's where our policy is a little bit enabling, in that really what we're asking for today is to pursue the ability to explore these opportunities. Our procedure requires us to do that public engagement, and certainly when we engage on specific facilities, we'll hear where there's contention and have the opportunity to bring that into the agreement that we then bring forward to committee and council for decision.
And then where appropriate, you're not just going to do like a mass public engagement, but like some dedicated intentional conversations with specific groups of people.
That's right. Our policy requires us to do that, and we want to be transparent around these. We want the agreement to stand for the community, the city, and protect our brand and have value alignment. And so we do intend to do that engagement in a very meaningful way, focused on every individual facility and or asset.
Yeah. I think I'm running out of time. So I think those are all my questions. I do have some thoughts. I just want to share them before we potentially requisition, that's all. Anyways.
Thank you. Maybe just a few additional questions. So looking at the 21 million over the next 10 years, That's after related costs and expenses. Can you just help me understand? So the related costs and expenses, is that administrative? Yeah.
Yeah, it's largely administrative. It's about $500,000 a year. That includes both our staff time, the engagement that is required under our policy, as well as a bit of a sales commission, because if we do pursue this, we obviously are going to need help, and we would like to bring in someone who can support us to do that. And that is generally commission-based. It's along the lines of work that, transit does with their advertising, for example.
Okay, so around 500,000 a year.
And it's been factored in, so
Right.
that's a net gain,
Right.
that 21 million, yeah.
Gotcha. Now I'm just trying to do some napkin math with the estimates here. So with the I think it was 26 facilities that aren't already, I guess, currently approved for NAM sale. With those 26, can you, my napkin math says that that's around like 80,000 per facility per year when we break that 21 million. Is that right?
So
obviously there's degrees of variability, but
the report before you is to consider facility name sale, but also internal assets. So things like the fitness center, gymnasiums, arena naming. So it's broader than just facility name sale. We have undertaken asset valuation by a third party. We have an understanding of what each amenity costs. It's a little different depending on the facility we're talking about, the specific amenity in which facility we're talking about. And so our goal is to establish a baseline for each of those amenity types, the facilities, and use that as sort of our baseline to negotiate. Obviously, we're going to get the best value for the city as we go through that negotiation price. So it's not a fixed price type of negotiation.
Right. Right. So coming back to the questions that were previously asked just around Edmontonians' perception of brand. And I guess one of the things that sticks out to me, there are certain facilities where there's sort of a before and after, and there's a continuity where previously it was very obvious, City of Edmonton's facility, and I think lots of folks still carry that, even with name changes. But I'm also wondering, I'm reflecting even on my own experiences where I've, for periods of time, lived in other cities where I wasn't living there before, moved there, and associated that name not necessarily with the municipality because I didn't have that continuity and I wasn't part of that that story of a transition to a different you know what I'm saying. I can see nods. I guess. How does that factor in? There are so many new people who are moving to our communities. How do we ensure that value that Edmontonians expect to see remains?
If I can just start by saying, we aren't pioneers in this space, and so as we mentioned in our opening remarks, even in the region, St. Albert, Sherwood Park, Spruce Grove, Morinville, Leduc, Victoria, Regina, Winnipeg, this is something that the public writ large is very used to seeing. And so, if we were on the cutting edge and this was something new that people were, I think, uncertain or felt a little bit confused by, I could understand how there might be a bigger impact, but this is a space that municipalities have been occupying and moving into with greater volume and frequency over the last decade. But I'll pass it over to Kim for further comments.
Yeah, and I would just add to that, we work very closely with our brand team as well. Retaining city brand is important to us. I think we have done a fine balance of that in the Booster Juice Recreation Center, for example. We're always looking for opportunities as well to strengthen and bolster that city brand as well. So I think all those things are possible around these types of agreements.
Okay, well, and I appreciate those answers. I think I've made my concerns known previously and publicly around name sales. I remain very concerned, but we'll listen to my colleagues as to the best way to proceed today, because I see Councillor Rutherford is on the board, so we'll go to her.
Yeah, I would concur that I've also made it pretty publicly known. my stance on this item. Though I do see a difference between internal assets and, let's say, I'm thinking about, if this passes, Coronation Rec Center, which would be opening in 2026. I know there's internal things and the working with the society around, maybe some fundraising opportunities on the internal assets, which are fine. But I have a big problem with the naming of the entirety of the facility, selling that off. So with that in mind, if this is A, received for information today, or B, does not pass either committee or council, what are the implications of that in terms of those internal sales? I'm thinking about even the ice rink, the boards on the ice rink, those kind of things are fine. But I think where we've gone too far is with the naming of the overall facility.
So I'm uncertain as to the clerical.
So my question is, if this is not, if we do not approve this, either at council or at committee, where does that leave administration with regards to the internal sales? What would your path forward be?
So they're not factored into budget at this point. So the numbers are not going to be achievable. I think we would have to look for other ways to generate revenue. Of course, we are undertaking this as part of the work underway on the fiscal gap review.
So let me be a bit more explicit. I know you are working in partnership with an organization around the Coronation Rec Center. There's already agreements in place for them to be able to fundraise to sell internal components of that facility. If this does not pass today, which I do not want it to pass today, how does it affect those things? Because I also care about those partnerships and those agreements that are already underway.
It has no impact on that partnership agreement that's in place and underway.
Okay, that's all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Councillor Hamilton.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Can you hear me? Okay, great. So I think Councillor Rutherford asked a really good question. I just want to follow up on the administration. How would it impact future partnership opportunities of in the same vein?
I think sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead. I was going to say what I heard was that anything underway right now would not be stopped, but how would it impact similar opportunities that have not started yet?
Right. So to clarify, any agreements that are in place are in place, and we will honor them. Moving forward, it's very hard to predict. What I can share with you is we know our partners are very interested in pursuing these. And so if that means that we simply draw that line, I think that is the conversation we would have to have moving forward.
Okay, that is very helpful. Thank you.
I
Madam Chair,
I also see that Margot Hoffner, our legal advisor, has something to add.
Thanks, Jen. I was just going to jump in to clarify or offer some clarity. This report, all it would be doing is removing the obligation for administration to come to you each time they want to pursue a potential opportunity. It doesn't change the fact that every time, if they were able to secure an opportunity or had a serious negotiation ready to undergo, they would have to come back to you to approve any final name sale. Just gives them the ability to go out and explore. If they don't get this report passed, that means every time they want to even think about exploring, they have to come to council first and ask for permission. Does that clarify?
Okay. Yeah, that does. Thank you. Madam Chair, something I know it's not the will of committee, but I do think other members of council would like to have more of a say in it, just because I think this I think there's a longer conversation about the direction we've given administration here. So my preference would be to requisition it.
Requisition.
I don't think it'd be a long conversation at council, but I do think that people should have an opportunity to weigh in on that.
Great, thank you so much. So I've heard requisition from Councillor Hamilton and Councillor Stevenson. So this will be requisitioned up to council. Thank you so much, everyone. That ends the discussion, and just in time because it is noon. Responses to councillor inquiries, none. Private reports, none. Motions pending, none. Notices of motions without customary notice, none, which means we're adjourned. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great afternoon.